Marvel's X-Men are known for their fight to protect humankind, even though a majority of humans are not being as kind to the mutants. However, not every mutant out there is so benevolent, and Apocalypse, aka En Sabah Nur, one of the oldest living mutants, is also one of the greatest threats that the X-Men have to deal with. His godlike abilities make him near invincible, and his long history also means a rich lore surrounding his rise to a life of villainy. The recently concluded X-Men 97 Season 1 has set up Apocalypse as the major antagonist in Season 2, and we thought this might be a good time to revisit his past, the life of En Sabah Nur, before he turned to his dark side. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Thank you for letting me in.
Exploring the entire backstory of Apocalypse, how did the ancient mutant spend his early life? When Marvel Comics first introduced Apocalypse, he was brought in as a super powerful villainous entity who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. He was obsessed with this idea of survival of the fittest, and this invincible ancient mutant saw himself as the ideal example. Apocalypse had a diverse range of powers, from shape-shifting to teleportation to his incredible physical strength, but there is a lesser-known side to this intimidating villain that can be explored if we head back to his early days. Apocalypse was born several thousand years ago in Akaba, and he was born with the mutant X gene. This caused his appearance to be different from the others, with gray skin and blue lips, and these strange characteristics led his people to abandon him as a baby. He was then taken in by Baal of the Sandstormers, and he went on to become his mentor in the early days. It is from Baal that Apocalypse got the name En Sabah Nur, and it roughly translates to the first one. Although Baal raised En Sabah Nur as a child, he failed to imprint his harsh philosophies on the young mind. The Sandstormers were known for their strict survival rules and theories, and they believed that only the ones strong enough to survive the hardships of the world were worthy of life. However, despite having these people as company, young En Sabah Nur was compassionate and selfless.
No more weapons! No more system!
What turned Apocalypse from a generous young boy into a deadly villain? When you look at the entire origin story of Apocalypse, it almost seems like the stars were aligned to turn him into a villain, and it was simply his fate. The beginning of this transformation from an innocent young boy to a ruthless villain started after the evil time traveler, Kang the Conqueror, arrived in ancient Egypt. He already knew about En Sabah Nur and his future as Apocalypse, and his mission to go back in time was to find the young Apocalypse. He initially sent in his General Ozymandias with an entire army go after the Sandstormers, and later he assumed power in Egypt as the pharaoh Ramatut. Both Baal and En Sabah Nur were injured after the initial conflict, and they hid in a cave to wait out the danger. This fateful cave housed advanced alien technology, and before a severely injured Baal passed away, he revealed the secrets of the cave to Apocalypse. This was actually left behind by the godlike aliens called the Celestials, and the whole event became a turning point in the life of young En Sabah Nur. After the death of his mentor Baal, Apocalypse was determined to have his revenge, and he daringly entered the city of the pharaoh while posting as a slave. He even got romantically attached to Nefri, the sister of Ozymandias, but his advances were rejected. If you combine the pain of heartbreak with that of losing his father figure Baal, something disastrous is in the making, and at this point, the true mutant powers of Apocalypse were unleashed. He was no longer the innocent En Sabah Nur and named himself Apocalypse, a name that would terrorize generations to come. Fearing the consequences of his rampant destruction, Pharaoh Ramatut tried to flee, but Apocalypse turned his general Ozymandias into a blind clairvoyant using the alien technology. Now, he had also mastered some of this advanced technology, and Apocalypse no longer aged or showed signs of weakness. After having turned into an unforgiving supervillain, Apocalypse traveled across the world and tried to convince various civilizations to worship him as a god. He triggered wars and justified his destructive ways the same way as the Sandstormers, suggesting the survival of the fittest would lead to growth, judgment, and destruction. He developed a loyal following from the clan Akaba, and even the enslaved General Ozymandias sometimes acted in his stead. Over the next few centuries, he clashed with various notable characters such as Thor and Count Dracula, and eventually he created the superhuman entity that we know as Mr. Sinister using his advanced technology. This ultimately brought him into the world of mutants and X-Men that we are familiar familiar with. But behind the age-old enmity is the tragic and rough background that many choose to ignore. How would things turn out if his loved ones weren't taken from him, or if Kang the Conqueror did not intervene? There's a chance that we will find some of the answers in X-Men 97, because it's clear from the comic book history that Apocalypse is not necessarily evil, and simply a delusional individual who abides by his harsh theories and acts accordingly. Some major instances when Apocalypse wasn't really being a supervillain. Across the extensive comic book history featuring Apocalypse, he has been a terrifying antagonist on most occasions. His goals of a new world under his rules and his philosophy of survival of the fittest don't really make him the most compassionate guy out there, and there are plenty of instances where his harsh and brutal ways lead to devastation and death. However, on a few rare occasions, sometimes willingly and sometimes for his own selfish purpose, Apocalypse has worked for the good guys, and he has been the unexpected protector. In this segment, let us take a quick look at some of his better accomplishments.
I'm not here for them. I'm here for you.
Apocalypse put his animosity aside for the greater mutant good. As a marginalized mutant himself, Apocalypse is familiar with the pain of exclusion and discrimination. Thus, even though his own agenda might have been different, he comes together with Professor Xavier and Magneto to bring about the mutant nation Krakoa, where mutants can live in peace. Apocalypse puts aside his own mission and enmity with the likes of Xavier to make this happen. And we have also seen Apocalypse being diplomatic enough to participate in a discussion with countries that are not so cooperative with the mutant nation. The Apocalypse we are usually familiar with would have simply obliterated them to extinction. The time when Apocalypse destroyed the evil New World Order. New World Order was a sinister organization that was secretly formed by the Red Skull with his Nazi ideology. While the New World Order fought against the Hulk, Apocalypse turned him into one of his horsemen. Later, the New World Order managed to defeat Hulk. They even took away his sword back to their facility. However, Apocalypse remotely detonated the sword, and the entire New World Order organization was destroyed in a single moment. When Apocalypse fought against alien invaders. During the rule of the Pharaohs, Earth was attacked by a powerful alien brood, and these insectoid monsters posed a great threat to humanity. In this crisis, Apocalypse fought alongside the Brotherhood of the Shield, which is basically the earliest version of S.H.I.E.L.D., the advanced security organization protecting the world. It was formed by a group of warriors and scholars, and Apocalypse joined hands with them briefly to fight off a greater threat. Apocalypse versus High Evolutionary. The High Evolutionary is a crazy but genius geneticist, and he once planned to destroy all life forms on Earth. This widespread genocide and mass execution would have been possible had it not been for the intervention of Apocalypse. This time, he was not motivated by any selfless objective and simply viewed the High Evolutionary as someone who was going to reshape the world in a way different from his own. Nevertheless, Apocalypse fought the High Evolutionary alongside other superheroes, and eventually, the threat of extinction was curtailed.
My name is En Sabah Nur.
How much of Apocalypse's early life can we see in X-Men 97? From what we have gathered from the events of Season 1, X-Men 97 Season 2 will be all about Apocalypse across different timelines. The X-Men are scattered across the past, present, and future timelines, and it seems like Apocalypse is present in every single one of them. However, we are quite intrigued about the version of Apocalypse spotted by the likes of Professor Xavier and Magneto in ancient Egypt. This is En Sabah Nur before he turns into a deadly villain, and we expect to see his entire origin story play out in this segment. The futuristic timeline might show an evolved and deadlier version of Apocalypse, who was probably taking over the world, bearing a handful of resistance fighters. Meanwhile, in the present timeline, Apocalypse is all set to revive a fallen Gambit and turn him into one of his horsemen. But can the X-Men act in the past to alter the future versions of Apocalypse? Will we get to see the heroic side of Apocalypse as well when he fights alongside the X-Men in the past? Well, we would have to wait for Season 2 to find out for certain, but surely the possibilities are rather intriguing. We would love to hear your opinion on Apocalypse and his unfortunate past that shaped him into a ruthless supervillain. Also, tell us if you think that his character can be transformed if the X-Men manage to fix his past in the X-Men 97 narrative. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!